People who made large romantic gestures in public and got rejected, how did you survive the humiliation? I had been dating a girl, let's call her Anne, for several years. We met while working at the same company, and we were still working there at the time. Things were going really well, so well, in fact, that I thought it was time to pop the question. Before that, I need to mention another man. Let's call him Joe. Joe had been transferred to our branch about 6 months before I decided to propose. He was one of those guys being groomed for upper management, and I assumed he was sent to our branch because my manager was getting up there in years, and Joe was a prime candidate to replace him. One odd thing about Joe was that his left eye looked foggy and glazed over, like it had a white film on it, though he could apparently see just fine. More importantly, Joe was a total jerk. He sucked up to anyone he wanted to impress and treated everyone else terribly. Back to the rejection. I had done everything a guy is supposed to do. I asked her dad for permission, found a great ring, and took her to a nice restaurant. Anne looked extremely nervous throughout dinner, but I assumed she knew what was coming and was just feeling anticipation. Like I said, things were going really well. After the main course and before dessert, I got down on one knee and proposed. She said no. It turned out she had been secretly dating Joe for several months and had been planning to break up with me, which she proceeded to do in front of the entire restaurant. Then she left. The waiter gave me a free dessert, which didn't help much. Not long after that, Joe got promoted elsewhere and transferred, and Anne followed him. So now I am still not married. If it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe, I'd have been married a long time ago. Story 2. This wasn't super public, but I had been dating this girl for a while and decided to ask her to be my girlfriend. I went, Build-A-Bear, and had a bear made with a voice recording of me saying, "Sarah, will you be my girlfriend?" I went to her house, gave it to her, and asked her to press the bear's hand so the message would play. She politely declined because she wasn't ready for a relationship. Her family was having a party that day, and her 8-year-old sister, who loved stuffed animals, grabbed the bear. Her little sister started running around the house, pressing the bear's hand repeatedly. Her entire family and their friends heard my desperate request over and over again. I couldn't stand hearing my own voice asking her out anymore, so I left shortly after. Story 3. Well, I asked a girl out in high school by writing her initials with flowers on her trampoline. I did it overnight, so I expected a reaction the next morning, right? Wrong. I left a note on her car, but she drove her mom's car to school that day, which she sometimes did. Even at lunch that afternoon, she said nothing, so I was in full, "what the hell have I done to deserve this silence" mode. Thankfully, her mom called her during class and told her she needed to come home. She did. We talked at the end of the day, and she said we could talk more that night. Fast forward to that night. No response to calls or texts. Screw it. Hang with the bros. I went over to my best friend's house, and lo and behold, she was there with some other guy. So I had to act like it was nothing, silently crushed inside, since my friends didn't know yet. Worst pool game ever. Somehow I ended up destroying my best friend's phone because he questioned whether I'd seriously do it, and I wanted to prove to her that I was serious about what I said. I drove home with sadness level 10, hormones, and teenage angst. Story 4. The other night at my friend's birthday party, I was drunk, and all I remember is leaning in to say something nice to my fiancé, and I ended up leaning in to give him a kiss on the cheek, but he pulled away. He gave me a look and said, "You're being really frigging annoying." It felt like being shot in the chest with a shotgun. I wanted to freak out, but I just hung my head, said, "Sorry," and went to talk to some other people. The next morning, when I woke up, I started to talk to him about how he hurt my feelings the night before. He started laughing and got up, doing impersonations of me, falling all over the place, slurring his speech, screaming, "Honey, honey, why don't you love me? Oh, you don't love me. I'm frigging leaving you." Belch. Honey, love me. At first I didn't believe it, but he showed me photos later. If your partner leans in and tells you, "You're being frigging annoying," after you've had a few drinks, don't take it personally. Just nod and you'll understand in the morning. Story 5. I was hooking up with this girl at a bar. We were dancing and having fun, and I really liked her, so I was thinking we could maybe go on a few dates. I was about to ask her out when another girl came up and started dancing with me, trying to hook up. I politely declined, saying I was there with someone else. Then, the girl I was with told me I should hook up with the one trying to dance with me. We went and had a seat, and she told me she didn't really want to see me anymore and that we shouldn't hook up again. It sucked because we were at the bar with her roommate and friends, and a waitress was coming up to take our order as it happened. The waitress was a little embarrassed for overhearing and just asked if I was okay. I told her it was fine. We weren't actually dating. The most awkward part? The girl's roommate came up and said she thought we were all leaving to go back to their place in a couple of minutes. I had to tell her that her friend had just rejected me and that I wasn't coming along. Not exactly a grand gesture, but definitely a case of public rejection. Story 6. I Asked a girl out at a high school football game during our sophomore year. She said no, so I said goodbye, stood up, and left the game. I thought no one I really knew had seen it, so it didn't seem too bad at the time. Later that night, I was hanging out with some friends when her brother showed up and told everyone about it like it was a joke. That almost felt worse than her saying no. Story 7. I'm not sure if this counts as a romantic gesture or not, but I had a huge crush on a guy I used to see at the gym. I noticed he went to the water fountain a lot, so I decided to buy him a Gatorade. I worked up the courage to give it to him. I walked up to him and said, "I hope you don't think I'm weird, but I bought you a beverage." He smiled and told me it was pretty weird. I then walked away without looking back. I haven't seen him since. Story 8. My college roommate once proposed in a mall. The bad part was that he really went over the top, which kind of freaked out his girlfriend, who was quite meek. She whispered in his ear that she wasn't ready and then went home. My buddy just shrugged it off and didn't seem fazed at all. He knew he wouldn't see any of those people again, and if he did, they probably wouldn't recognize him. He was surprisingly level-headed about the whole situation. It was quite strange. Story 9. In middle school, I wrote a love note to a guy in my class I had a huge crush on, asking if he would be my boyfriend. He was really friendly to me in the class we shared and always made a point to talk to me, so I thought he liked me too. He was part of the cool group, though, and I guess I didn't notice that he never spoke to me outside of class. I walked up to him during lunch to give him the note. For some reason, my kid brain decided that passing notes in class was against the rules, so giving it to him at lunch in front of everyone seemed better. One of his jerk friends snatched the note, opened it, and read it out loud. To everyone at the table. They all laughed. My crush looked mortified, which I guess counted as a rejection. He never sat anywhere near me again in class, and I was picked on every day by his group for the next year and a half. It was pretty terrible. Story 10. A few days before I was going to move to another state to start medical school, my lesbian friend Shannon and I decided to go out to dinner. I wanted to see what this sort of public rejection would feel like because, I don't know, I was weird. So I borrowed a ring from another friend, and before we went out, I told Shannon that I wanted to publicly fake propose to her at dinner, and that she should reject me and leave the restaurant. She was totally down. So we're at dinner. It's pretty crowded. Friday evening, and I stand up, ask for everyone's attention, and say that Shannon is the love of my life and that I wanted the whole world to hear me ask for her hand in marriage. Literally all eyes are on us. Shannon looks shocked, then stammers, I can't believe you would, just why? And then walks out shaking her head. Jaws dropped. Utter silence. The most palpable tension I have ever felt. A kind waitress came over and told me not to worry about the bill and that if I wanted to leave, she understood. What could I do? I left $20 on the table and bolted. It wouldn't have been enough to cover the meal, but it would have been a good tip. Story 11. Not super romantic, but in high school, I asked this girl out by getting her a ton of flowers from Vaughn's. I don't know what I was thinking. A lot of them were super wilted and messed up. I set it up before our careers class, and when people started walking in, I realized this was kind of messed up. When she showed up, I was super nervous, red and sweaty. When she approached her desk, she saw the wilted flowers and looked mortified. I kind of chickened out and just asked her if she wanted to go out to hot. Dog on a stick with me because I'm a fast thinker on my feet. She was kind about it and let me down easily, but the look on her face still makes me cringe. She took the flowers off her desk and left them underneath it after class. In retrospect, I probably should have gone to Smith's to get the flowers. Story 12. In 7th grade, we had a field trip to go ice skating. As we were walking to the ice rink about 20 minutes from the school, I saw the cutest girl I had ever seen. This was early in the year, and most of us came from different primary schools, so I had no clue who she was. I asked a kid next to me what her name was, and by the end of the 20 minutes, as news traveled up to where she was at the front of the group, it became clear I wanted to ask her out. She declined, but a couple of months later, while my dad was filling up at a Canadian Tire, I saw and heard 2 girls banging on their car window. It was her and her sister trying to get my attention. I left the country shortly after, but I will always have fond memories of her. Wherever you are, Stephanie, I will always remember you. Story 13. Dude, all right. A couple of Christmases ago when I was married, I bought my wife a Jeep, a new family car, considering we had recently had our first son. I had bad credit, needed a co-signer, but the most important thing was making my wife feel safe when driving around. Anyway, I decided that the company Christmas party would be the perfect time to give it to her. So I went out, bought a carbo, drove her to the party in our crappy Ford Escort, and had my buddy drop the Jeep off and put the bow on the hood. About an hour into the party, I couldn't take it any longer. I had my buddy park the car right outside the front door and asked my wife if she wanted a Christmas present early. She said yes, and I asked her to come outside. There it was, the Jeep with the bow. She looked at me and said, "So, what? You had to give this to me. Here? You're really selfish. Thanks for embarrassing me. She went inside, picked up our kid from childcare, and asked me to drive the Ford home while she took the Jeep. That was it, just leaving me absolutely speechless, my pride the size of a mustard seed. I've never been so humiliated and dejected in my life. I never want to feel like that again. Ever. Story 14. One time I was at a party and got piss drunk. I told a friend of mine who I was really into that if I ever meet a girl I really like, someone really special, I'm going to take that girl to the aquarium because girls put out for Cuttlefish. Then I went to throw up a bit. It wasn't too bad, more like spitting up. I came back to her and said, "Will you go to the aquarium with me?" The whole room went silent and I added, "I can show you the Cuttlefish." Her eyes sort of widened and she just said, "Oh," and walked away to stand in a corner by herself. Then I went home and pooped. On the bed. Somehow I remember everything. I wish that I'd blacked out. Definitely not one of my finer moments. Story 15. Sophomore year of high school, I was pretty involved in my school's drama department. Yeah, I know. There was a girl I had befriended the year before who was now a senior. And this was back when I was naive enough to think grand gestures were a good idea. So I got basically most of the class in on the plan. Asking her to homecoming, I had two main ideas. The first was pulling a Top Gun and getting all the guys to sing the Righteous Brothers classic, "You Never Close Your Eyes Anymore," with me. Luckily, one of my friends in her year, who was like a big brother to me, talked me out of it. Instead, I had the bright idea to have my friend hand her a parcel addressed to the most beautiful girl at insert high school here, from Bundy Bro as she walked into class, where I was waiting with a bouquet of roses. Inside the parcel was a hand mirror with Prom written on it. Well, that didn't work out as planned. She was nice about it, pulling me outside and explaining how she appreciated the gesture and that it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for her. But she had already made plans to go solo with her best friends. And she did, but she ended up dancing with me for most of the night. Definitely not the ideal outcome. Then there was that time the next year when I was walking up to a girl I had French class with to ask about the homework during junior prom season. I was loudly greeted by, "No, Bundy Bro, I don't want to go to prom with you. Ew." To which I answered, "Nah, I'm already going with Sarah, but thanks for the help with the French homework." High school. Story 16. Not me, but a friend of mine broke up with her boyfriend, blocked his number, and moved out of state. He was a jerk and spoiled, and she basically had it with him. She was living it up in a new town, dating other guys. When he showed up at her doorstep with a huge ring and asked her to marry him, he promised he would change and give her the life she always wanted. She didn't say yes right away, but she missed her friends and decided to move back to town with him. And move in. Eventually, after much persistence and him making an effort to change, she said yes. Dude went right back to being a spoiled jerk. They were engaged for about a month. Story 17. I was one of the people who had to reject someone in public once. It's terrible. A girl asked me out in front of a big group at her best friend's graduation party. I was just kind of confused because I had never hung out or talked with her before. I felt horrible, but what was I supposed to do? Say yes just to spare her in front of a group? I always preach that even with something as small as asking someone out, you need to remember how bad it is to reject someone and consider the other person's feelings. It got worse because I received a ton of texts from her friends saying I should have known and to read my yearbook. She had written in my yearbook that she had a big question to ask me at her friend's grad party, winky face and all. I never read the stuff people wrote there. Story 18. My friend, let's call him Teddy, loves doing this. He'll find girls on Tinder, OKC, or whatever dating site he's on that week, ask them out, and then propose to them in a ridiculous way. The reactions are truly priceless. He'll meet a girl for coffee, get down on one knee, and propose. Then, once she rejects him, he'll act like he's about to cry, turn to anyone who was paying attention and say, "I don't understand. We had our first date here. I thought it was going so well." Story 19. I was with two buddies at a basketball game in a neighboring town. Buddy 1, we'll call him Greg, was dating one of the cheerleaders. Buddy 2, Frank, kind of had a thing with another cheerleader. We went to pretty much every game and started making stupid signs to cheer on the girls rather than the basketball players. After about a dozen games, everyone in the small high school knew who we were. Frank decided he wanted to ask his cheerleader to be his girlfriend, so we made our signs that said, "Ashley, will you go out with me?" Across all three, he decided to pull the trigger, and we held them up. She saw it for a split second and looked back at the game. No one realized she'd seen it, so the entire cheerleading squad and most of the crowd were pointing at the signs and calling her name. After everyone had seen the signs and she was refusing to look up, Greg's girlfriend motioned for us to put the signs down. We left immediately and Frank didn't go to any other games. Story 20, I was asked out to homecoming in public, and I ended up feeling awful for declining. Backstory, I was a sophomore and had been out with my friends a few weeks earlier when the topic of homecoming came up. I mentioned that I did not want to attend and that even if someone asked, I would not go. I had a very bad experience at my freshman homecoming and was against the idea of ever going to another one. Sadly, my group of friends convinced one of our guy friends, who they knew had a crush on me, that no matter what, I would have to say yes if he asked in front of everyone. We were in an early morning church class where his brother was the teacher, which only made it worse. At the very end of class, he left the room, came in with a huge bouquet of flowers, and proceeded to ask me in front of everyone. I was so embarrassed and felt terrible about what I was about to say. Since class was over and I was not giving a response, people slowly started to leave. I thanked him for the wonderful gesture and reminded him of the conversation a few weeks prior when I said I did not want to attend homecoming at all. I told him I would be willing to go out to dinner or do something else, but homecoming was out of the picture. I know he was hurt, and we never went out after that. The next few weeks were embarrassing for both of us. I was hassled by people at church saying, if we were Catholic, Joe would have become a monk, all because I turned him down. So, yes, I can only imagine how awful it is to be turned down in public, but sometimes that humility is shared by the person doing the rejecting. Story 21. I went up to my crush and asked her out in front of the school with a bunch of people watching, just waiting around after school. She said no and that she wasn't into me. I turned around to my friends, who were all huddled about 20 feet away, eagerly watching. I made an oh crap face, and they immediately charged at me and lifted me like I was the coach of a team that had just won a championship. They carried me about 100 meters while cheering and yelling. Immediately, I did not care about the rejection, and everyone who saw it thought it was hilarious how I got carried away from the disaster scene. Thank God for my friends. It sucked because I was really into her, but it's a fun memory. Story 22. In high school, there was this girl in my French class. I wasn't a complete nerd, but I got good grades. This girl was and still is hot. One day, she told me we should go study at Starbucks, which was across the street from school. So we started going to Starbucks once a week to study. Then the study sessions moved over to her house. At this point, I thought she liked me because she was so friendly. One day, I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said no, obviously, because I was too good looking for her. I wasn't too disappointed or sad. A couple of days later, she told her friends. They made fun of me in front of my mom. I felt pretty crappy. Story 23. I was dating this girl who I was really into and thought I'd jump the gun by sending her a request to be in a relationship with me on Facebook. She texted me saying she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment. God, was I embarrassed when I next looked at my Facebook and saw tons of notifications. People had liked it and were asking who the lucky girl was. Needless to say, we never went on another date, and I learned about taking things slow. Story 24. I didn't really get rejected, but there was this girl I had a crush on with whom I had a really friendly relationship. Since I had no clue why girls do certain things, I thought she liked me the same way I liked her. She would always smile at me, and one evening, when she wanted to go somewhere in town, I even drove her there, but it was no good. None of my friends knew about her relationship status, so I couldn't be sure. Fast forward. We were at a birthday party, and I thought I should make a move at some point. Suddenly, I'm standing beside the bar talking with some friends, when some guy comes in and kisses her. I must have looked really perplexed. I just could not deal with the situation because her boyfriend gave me this weird look. I quickly decided to leave and was heartbroken and shocked for the next few days. The morning after the party, she actually sent me a message saying she was sorry she hadn't told me about her boyfriend before, but she didn't know how to, so at least she noticed that I had a crush on her. I got that going for me. Story 25. A somewhat grand romantic gesture done to me while I was dating someone else was that he got down on both knees, grabbed my hands, and asked me to date him. When I turned him down, he stood up, requested that I close my eyes and open my mouth. I refused, but he assured me he wouldn't do anything weird. Hesitantly, I did it. He cupped his hands around his mouth, brought it close to mine, and screamed, "I love you!" into my mouth. He gave me a wistful look and left. Several other weird and creepy grand gestures later, I got a restraining order on Valentine's Day. Story 26 I did. The rejecting on this one. It was back in high school, and a new girl moved to our school in the middle of the year. She was really outgoing, and we got along in class. Soon she started sitting with us and flirting with everyone. I didn't think she had any interest in me specifically, since she was acting the same way toward just about everyone. Valentine's Day came, and I was walking from the parking lot when I saw her standing at the front door holding a sign. A lot of people had been walking by and seeing her holding it. As I got closer, I realized what it said. Please be my boyfriend. So, she didn't know I already had a girlfriend. The whole school saw her sign, and everyone knew I already had a girlfriend. Story 27. Once in high school, I stole a bunch of flowers from a graveyard and put them on this girl's doorstep. She happened to be out of town for the weekend and it rained really hard, scattering the flowers all over her yard. I also didn't know that her elderly grandma lived with her. When the neighbors saw the graveyard flowers, they thought the old lady had died. The neighbors started sending more flowers, and by the time she got home, it was a real mess. I just played dumb. Romance is for suckers. Story 28. I once asked a girl out with a boombox and some posters. When we hung out, we both always bragged about knowing the words to All Star by Smash Mouth. So I went to her house, played the song really loud until she came outside, and then started flipping through the posters. I had written stuff like, "I've always wanted to do this, but never could," and "I think you are really cool, yada." She was too nice to say no to my face, but once I tried to nail down when we would go out, it got all weird and she stopped talking to me. I ran into her 6 months ago, didn't give her the time of day. Story 29. In high school, I had been texting this girl a lot, gone on quite a few dates, and even snuggled. I thought it was time to ask her to be my girlfriend. I decided to write and sing a song and put it on our school's announcements on Valentine's Day. I saw her later that day in class. I sat down and knew it was a no. I had to sit next to her for the whole 90 minutes, knowing I had embarrassed myself. She told me, "I just can't, so I'll see you later," and ran off. No other explanation. I could have sworn it was in the bag. The things that stung the most were, 1. Every other girl in the school thought it was so romantic and asked how my girlfriend and I were, and I had to tell them she said no. 2. Valentine's Day is also my birthday. Story 30. I once asked my best friend to be my girlfriend. I had been really in love with her for quite some time, and I just thought, F it, let's make a move, because we understood each other very well and always had great times together. Anyway, it was Valentine's Day, and I was eating lunch with 2 friends when they convinced me to ask her over. National television. I live in Switzerland. There were these guys walking around where you could send Valentine's wishes on TV, so I manned up and did it. I'm not normally nervous, but that was probably one of the most nervous moments I've had. In the evening, my male best friend texted me on Facebook and asked if we were together. I was like, "No, why are you asking?" And he told me she had changed her Facebook status. Well, screw it. Still best friends. She isn't with that guy anymore, but with another, and totally happy. And I'm now in a relationship as well for 7 months. I know it wasn't really a public rejection, but at least it was a very public gesture. Edit. Also, if you're wondering, I was destroyed at that time. Like my heart had been ripped out, trampled upon, cut into pieces, burned to ash, dissolved in acid, and then put back to restart all over. I lost every bit of happiness and joy in my life. 3 days later, I started a relationship with another girl who clearly had a crush on me and whom I liked a lot, but I never loved her as much as my best friend. I just needed something to get over the pain at that time. Story 31. I moved my senior year of high school to a new state. Surprisingly, I had better luck with people there than I ever did at my old school. Getting to know everyone was pretty easy, and even in that short year, I made a few best friends that I still keep in contact with to this day. I never really went to any school events. Just one random dance my parents made me go to, but no homecomings, no prom. Admittedly, not for lack of trying. I was always rejected. I only attended if I had a part in it, like baseball because I played on the high school team, or marching band at football games. I figured that since I was already at a different school, this could be my chance to change all of that. The new school only hosted 2 major events, homecoming and prom, versus my old school, which had a bunch of random dances and lock-ins. I came up with the idea of freezing a note in ice that cheerily read, "Now that we've broken the ice, will you go to homecoming with me?" And it worked. She said yes. I was so used to being laughed at that I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. Homecoming was about 3 weeks away, so over that time we planned things like dinner beforehand and what to wear. I was asked to, and did, buy everything. I bought the tickets to the dance, which were overpriced since it was one of only 2 events the school hosted. I bought tickets to the football game. I had already bought the clothes I was going to wear. 3 days before the dance, she came up to me saying she had changed her mind. She was actually going to go with another guy. That's when I gave up and realized that I was on the right track by not trying at my old school. I didn't go to my senior prom after that either. To top it all off, I had plans to meet some friends after graduation. They blew me off. I had already told my family I was going out and felt guilty. So I sat in my car for about 40 minutes until the parking lot was completely empty, then drove to the farthest McDonald's I could find for a McFlurry. When I got home, my family asked if I had fun, and I lied, making up this whole big party, one of the most depressing times of my life. F, everything about high school. Story 32. This past fall, a girl and I were close friends. I was going to ask her to homecoming and have a good time. All her friends were telling me to ask her and to do something special. I play the saxophone, so I learned a song, forgot which, and made a sign to ask her. All her friends wanted to be there, so right after school in the parking lot, I went out, played the song for her, and asked her to homecoming. She actually said yes, but you know what? 5 minutes later, she texted me saying she didn't want to go with me, that I should have known how she hates being pressured, that it was all my fault, and that she didn't want a serious date. I was like, your friends said to ask, and I just wanted to have fun. Worst experience ever. I don't know if I could ever do that again. Story 33. While I may not consider this a romantic gesture, I had a prom proposal go sour a few years back. I had become friendly with a girl in my history class who shared my love of Doctor Who. When prom time came around, I decided to take action. On a whim, a month before prom, I printed up a Doctor Who-themed scavenger hunt, guiding her from clue to clue until she arrived at the final stop. A picture of me dressed as David Tennant, holding a sonic screwdriver photoshopped inside the TARDIS. The biggest mistake I made was telling my friends about this plan. When the time came, a huge crowd had gathered to watch. After class, I had my history teacher deliver the first clue, a cringy Whovian poem with a Dalek printed behind it. I went to the final stop and waited, and waited, and waited. She didn't show up. I decided to check around and found her in a classroom crying. Apparently, she wasn't going to prom that year, and in my carelessness, I had forgotten to check with her friends before asking her. Needless to say, the crowd wasn't amused, and I messed up, hurting her and my reputation. Story 34. This happened with my first crush. I was really shy at the time, so I barely talked to her. Even so, she was always on my mind. Easter was coming up, and our class had a tradition where we would put our names and the chocolate we wanted on pieces of paper, then give one to the person whose name you picked. I got my piece, and it was hers. So, I thought, it must be destiny. With all the confidence I could muster, I decided to deliver the chocolate with a poem declaring my feelings for her. I wrote it, and that day, I delivered it exactly as planned. She said she would give me an answer after class. After class, she came to talk to me and said, "I'm sorry, but we are just colleagues." I told her I understood, and that it was okay. When I got home, I had a breakdown and cried a little. A few months later, I decided to stop having feelings for her and move on. Eventually, I realized I never had a chance because I barely spoke to her. Story 35. There was a girl in my roommate's senior seminar, so she was over a lot doing work with him. I became pretty good friends with her. She had moved to the United States when she was 6, and her first language was German. We started hanging out regularly, so one time in the quad, I practiced how to say, "Will you go out with me?" in German. I said it twice because I thought she didn't hear it correctly the first time. The second time, people nearby noticed a foreign language being spoken. She corrected my grammar and then said no. It really sucked, and I didn't know what to do, so I just left. Footnote: she later moved to Germany for a year and a half. When she came back, I ran into her at a bar with some friends. We ended up talking, and I went home with her. We didn't actually do anything, mostly because in my drunk mind, I wanted her to feel what being rejected was like, not my best move. Story 36. I watched a guy propose on Portland's Streetcar. He had a few friends with him to hold up a banner and another to record the whole thing. The intended recipient got on the train, paused to look at the banner, and he got down on one knee to pop the question. She started muttering, "This is way too soon," over and over. The friends holding the banner got really awkward and bunched it up, while the person with the camera tried to casually put it away. The whole train went silent as we waited for the next stop, where everyone scattered. This all went down about 3 feet from me, and I buried my head in my book. I guess it really was way too soon. Story 37. I accidentally read this as people who have made large romantic gestures in public and gotten ejected. What was it like? This is my story. My girlfriend was an Air Force pilot, and she asked if I wanted her to give me a lesson on our 3rd anniversary. I decided to propose while up there hiring people to set off fireworks in front of us that spelled, "Will you marry me?" When she saw them, she quickly said, "Honey, quick. You're stalling out. Press the blue button. Quickly." That blue button ejected me from the pilot's seat, and I was forced to parachute down to the ground. The people around me were quite confused. Story 38. About 10 years ago, I worked in a call center. There was a girl on my team who had a not-so-secret admirer. He would always leave presents and cards on her desk. It was blatantly obvious to everybody, but poorly smitten, he didn't realize she had no interest. He would try to corner her in the lunchroom or after work to start a conversation, and she would just shrug him off. One day, he left a long trail of rose petals from the entrance leading to her desk. Later that day, he asked, "So, when do we make it official?" She had to break it to him that she wasn't interested. The worst part? It would be another 3 days before the janitorial staff vacuumed up the petals. For 3 days, they were a constant reminder of his unsuccessful crash and burn. Part of me wants to commend him for taking a chance, and part of me feels bad that he couldn't read between the lines. Story 39. Not too public. My friend and I would always bicker about nonsense and tease each other constantly at school. Someone joked that we acted like an old married couple. I was helping him get over a girl after she cheated on him and had an abortion. After a couple of months, I thought things were going well between us, so I wrote a song within a week. I can't remember all the lyrics, but it was definitely about revealing my feelings toward him. I showed him the lyrics one day in the middle of a semi-busy hallway at school. His reply? Ah, cute. 6 years later, we're still just friends, while I'm the girlfriend of someone else. Sometimes it makes me wonder, what if? Story 40. So I asked 2 girls at different times to prom in my senior year of high school. Both were good friends and both were single, so I expected to do it in a cute way and just take a friend. This was about 9 years ago. The first one I asked, I did an Easter egg scavenger hunt. When she got to the end and I was standing there, I legitimately saw disappointment when she realized it was me. I had made a cookie display of a cake with a 45-degree slope, sugar cookie pine trees, a small gingerbread man on 2 candy cane skis, she liked skiing, and a couplet written in icing. You made it through the forest and the trees. Will you go to prom with me? She turned me down. Nicely, I guess. I'm going to be touring a university the weekend of prom. Anyway, other people in the classroom came up and asked if they could have a piece of the cake and cookies. For the second girl, I talked to one of my teachers, and he added a question to the end of her test with directions for everyone to turn and look at her after they finished. She said yes, but added, "You don't want me to do it in an elaborate way, do you?" I said, "You don't really need to." I almost wish she had said no because she was the worst prom date ever. We all went as friends, and 2 couples were in relationships. She flirted with one of the guys who was taken all night, wouldn't dance with me, didn't finish her meal, and hardly walked next to me. It got to the point where the guy's girlfriend noticed and got pissed. Not just about the flirting, but how she was ignoring me, and basically told her off while taking pictures with me. My date apologized, we played some games, drove home, and I went to bed. Story 41. My girlfriend broke up with me after years together, and a couple of days later I tried to win her back. I recorded myself playing the guitar. I had never really played in my life, so I kind of just made a beat and sang her a song. I posted it on her blog, and the next day she told me I was strange for doing it. Thank God I'm really good at laughing at myself. I didn't think it was good. I just hoped the effort factor would kick in. Story 42. I was actually the one doing the rejecting. On our 1-month anniversary, which in high school was apparently a big deal, he had planned a special date and bought me flowers. He asked me to meet him at his locker right after school. Before he could give me the flowers, I broke up with him. Everyone in the hallway heard, and to make it worse, I had a group of friends watching from a distance who burst out laughing. Looking back, I feel really terrible about it, but I think I was more in love with the idea of having a boyfriend than with him as a person. A few years later, I found his blog and saw that he had written a long post about me. He said the breakup affected him very deeply and that it took him several months to recover. As what felt like a final jab, he used my first and last name in the post. Story 43. In my book, getting a "sorry, it's not mutual" is okay. I used to be bullied in high school by girls who tricked me into thinking they liked me. I was naive, and it happened several times. Afterwards, they would just make fun of me. It hurt, and I lost trust in women and their romantic interest in me. I became cold and didn't take any signs of interest seriously, but I at least still tried to respect the other person's feelings. It got scary, and I would hope the heck out of situations where this could happen again. But of course, this was mostly in my head, shaped by past experiences. 10 years later, I met my new girlfriend, who is really sweet. Although I still felt some pain from high school, I tried to play it cool. Luckily, she saw through it, noticed I liked her, and got frustrated that I wasn't making a move. I think she is still a little annoyed that she had to break her tradition and take the first steps that brought us together. I find it funny and like to tease her by giving her too much love. The past pain is still there, but with her, there is only warmth. Story 44. I was the victim of a grand gesture once. A guy I had been on one sort of date with, he had accompanied me to a party, showed up at an afterparty. I was lying on the couch, wasted and trying not to hurl when everyone grabbed me and dragged me to the door. He was standing there with flowers saying he was in love with me and wanted to take it further. I literally said, okay, whatever, and ran to the bathroom to throw up. A few minutes later, a friend said she was heading home, so I hitched a ride with her and went to bed. Story 45. Heartbreaking. I tried to kiss her while we were on a balcony and she pulled back. She said, I have a boyfriend, but being friends was nice, right? It was nice, but I still felt hollow inside. She is one of 2 girls I've actually felt an emotional connection with, and I thought she was the one. I thought she felt the same way, but she didn't. I remember racing along the beach with her on nights before that happened. The sea air, the smell of the cigarettes she smoked. I have written a few thousand words to vent about how I feel, almost like I was writing to her. I really miss that girl. Then she got pregnant. Story 46. This happened by proxy as part of another kid's prank. I was in Spanish class in 9th grade, and a 10th grade guy claimed that one of the girls in the class had a crush on me. I didn't believe him for a second, and while the girl was cute, I wasn't particularly interested either. The 10th grade guy insisted otherwise and told her that he knew she liked me. The girl angrily said she didn't. It was kind of awkward, even though I hadn't initiated anything. Good times, plot twist, the girl and I are friends on Facebook now. It's funny how things turn out sometimes. Story 47. I received a note in high school from the best friend of the girl I liked, asking me out. Naturally, I replied yes in the note and gave it back. I immediately regretted it when it was opened and read to the class. I'm not one to really care about other people's opinions, so I was able to easily shrug it off. The following weekend, the friend did have her house Tepeed with 120 rolls of toilet paper, along with a dirty used toilet set on her lawn with a pile of fresh human mess in it, but I have no idea who did that. Story 48. Not sure if this counts, but I decided to write a proposal poem for every day in March and send it to a somewhat famous guy I was interested in. He's a musician and writes his own music, so I thought the poems might get his attention. I sent them to him over Twitter and quickly found out I was wrong. I didn't exactly get rejected outright, but my prom is this Saturday and I've got no response, so I'm pretty sure that means a no. Story 49. This was around Christmas during hockey season. The girl I had a crush on and hung out with loved the Penguins. For Christmas, I got her an official Penguins jersey. I went to the local store, grabbed a dozen roses, and spread them through the box. I also told her to keep a certain date open, but didn't say why. It was for really good seats to a Penguins game where I planned to ask her out. About a week before the game, I got a text from a friend who knew I had a crush on her. It said, "I see that crush's name, status on MySpace went from single to in a relationship." I responded, "Oh, that's news to me," but I was crushed. I offered to give the tickets to her and her new boyfriend, being meta as hell, but we still went together, and it was a decent time. I still get told it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for her, but I never got the chance. Oh well, you live and you learn. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.